The Sword of Wisdom That Ascertains Reality by Jamgön Mipham. This philosophy is unmistaken. All errors have been eliminated. The mind is free from doubt about 3 points. I pay homage to Manjushri, the treasure of wisdom. The teachings of the Sugata are profound, vast, and difficult to realize. For those who wish to taste this deathless nectar, I will bestow the light of intelligence. The Dharma taught by the Buddhas is completely based on the 2 truths, the worldly, relative truth, and the supreme, absolute truth. If one wants to know the nature of the 2 truths, with a mind that ascertains them unerringly, one should thoroughly establish the good, clear eyes of the 2 types of flawless, valid cognition. No matter how things appear, they arise interdependently. Nothing independent appears. That would be like a lotus appearing in the sky. When the collection of causes is complete, it functions to produce an effect. Each and every effect depends on its own specific causes. Therefore, by understanding correctly or incorrectly how causes and effects function, one engages in or refrains from activities. All the philosophical systems and fields of knowledge, like artistry, are also rooted in this. This is why cause and effect encompass all worldly training, and the training that transcends the world. Every interdependent thing has its unique defining characteristics, like solidity, wetness, or heat, because that is its own individual nature. This nature cannot be denied. In a single thing there are a variety of attributes, and there are numerous facts and classifications of terminology that establish or exclude those attributes. Each thing has its own specific nature. An object is thoroughly apprehended by direct perception. Then the conceptual mind, that which distinguishes and combines, uses terminology to label it as a separate thing. Objects of knowledge will be thoroughly understood by categorizing them into 2 groups, substantial things and designations based on terminology. There are many further classifications that elaborate on this. If one examines the true reality of causes, effects, and the nature of things, one cannot find any production and nothing that arises through dependency. By its own very nature, appearance is essentially emptiness. The basic space of phenomena, having the 3 aspects of liberation, is the nature of the ultimate. Although there is causal efficacy and dependency, the reasoning of the nature is the final reasoning. Once the nature of a thing has been reached, there are no further reasons to be sought. As was just explained, valid comprehension of a thing accords with the nature of the 2 truths, and is established through the power of fact. This is the reasoning of a valid proof. Similarly, the way things appear and the way they are comprehended according to their natures, either by direct perception or by inference of something else, which is unmistaken because it relies on what directly appears. There are 4 kinds of direct perception: unmistaken sensory perception, mental perception, self-aware perception, and yogic perception. Since their objects are appearing, specific phenomena, direct perception is not conceptual. Without direct perception, there would be no evidence, so there could be no inference. All appearances would be impossible, such as the way things arise from causes and then cease. Therefore, it is by relying on evidence that one understands emptiness and so forth. Without relying on the conventional, one cannot realize the absolute. The sense consciousnesses, which arise from the 5 sense faculties, clearly experience their own objects. Without direct sense perceptions, one would not perceive objects, like someone who is blind. Having arisen based on the mental sense faculty, mental direct perception clearly discerns outer and inner objects. Without mental direct perception, there would be no consciousness of all the phenomena that are commonly known. By meditating well according to the scriptures, yogic direct perception clearly experiences its own object, the ultimate. Without yogic direct perception, one would not see the ultimate, which transcends ordinary objects. The experience of direct perception clears away misunderstandings about forms being the way they are. If it were the same in relation to one's own mind, this would entail another knower, and that would be endless. Therefore the mind, which is clear and knowing by nature, knows itself in the same way that it knows objects. It illuminates itself without depending on anything else. This is called self-awareness. Whatever the other direct perception's experience is ascertained as being direct perception through self-awareness. Without self-awareness, there would be no way to establish this. Inference is rooted in direct perception, and direct perceptions are ascertained by self-awareness. When the experience of an unmistaken mind is reached, nothing further is needed to establish that. Therefore, on the basis of direct perceptions that are non-conceptual and unmistaken, misunderstandings are eliminated about manifest phenomena. Understanding happens through apprehending objects as mental images, and mixing those images with names. This is the activity of the mental consciousness and its concepts, which then develop all sorts of conventional terminology. Mental images appear in the mind, even for beings who do not understand language. By using concepts, they have the ability to mix images with names, to either engage or not engage with objects. Without the conceptual mind, there would be no terminology, such as negation and affirmation. There could be no inference, no subjects to be learned, and nothing whatsoever could be taught. Through concepts one can comprehend and affirm things that are not apparent, like goals for the future. Without inference and its concepts, everyone would be like newborn babies. By relying on a sign, one can understand things. A sign is unmistaken if it fulfills the three criteria for valid evidence. The sign is present in the subject. There is a positive pervasion and a counter-pervasion. An inference about a hidden phenomenon is proven through its relationship with a sign that is established by valid direct perception. To establish a proof, there is the sign of being an effect, the sign of having the same nature, and the sign of not being perceived, which refutes an object to be negated, because the object is not perceived or something contradictory is perceived. These are the three types of signs. When seen authentically, all appearances are primordially equal. When one's mind stream is pure, one's perceptions are pure. Everything is pure by nature. Functional things are based on their having arisen. Non-functional things are based on having been designated. Therefore, both functional things and non-functional things are empty of essence. Ultimately, in the true nature, the empty basis and its emptiness are not two different things. Appearance and emptiness are inseparable and ineffable. This is experienced by individual, self-knowing awareness. All the aspects that are established are encompassed by affirmation of their existence, or what they are. All the aspects that are refuted are encompassed by negation, by showing their non-existence or what they are not. Having gained certainty about this way of using affirmations and negations based on valid cognition, one can then show others, proofs, and refutations according to reasoning. In formulating refutations, one uses reasons with the three criteria for valid evidence to establish autonomous arguments, and one refutes others by showing the consequences depending on what they assert. On the conventional level, since there are appearances that do not accord with reality, there are the way things appear and the way things are. In dependence on impure, ordinary perception, or pure vision, there are two types of conventional valid cognition, which resemble human eyes and divine eyes. These two have their own features and are categorized by their natures, causes, effects, and functions. A mind that is unmistaken about ordinary facts arises from having correctly apprehended its objects. Valid ordinary perception eliminates misunderstandings about objects and fully apprehends the facts of a situation. Limitless, timeless awareness arises from seeing suchness just as it is. It eliminates misunderstandings about its objects, which are inconceivable, and results in knowing the entire extent of phenomena. There are also two approaches to the absolute truth, the expressible and the inexpressible. These are comprehended by the two types of valid cognition that investigate ultimate reality. By relying on the former, one engages in the latter. It is like clearing one's eye of a flaw. Once the eye of valid cognition is thoroughly cleansed, one will see the reality of purity and equality. Both the non-conceptual mind and the conceptual mind have undiluted aspects as well as diluted aspects, like perceiving two moons, dreams, and a rope as a snake. Therefore, the two categories of valid cognition and non-valid cognition are established. Without both valid cognition and non-valid cognition, it would be impossible to distinguish what is false due to delusion from what is true and undiluted, and there could be no philosophy. When one investigates the authentic, absolute truth, one uses direct perception and inference, and valid cognition and nonvalid cognition. In the same way that these are classifications, they are conceptual constructs. However, their nature is established as empty, and therefore beyond all constructs. Emptiness is in all conventional constructs, just like heat is in fire. Therefore, appearance and emptiness abide inseparably in all phenomena as the means and what arises from the means, so one cannot affirm one of them and negate the other. If one asks whether someone can engage in the absolute truth merely by seeing the world, without investigating it according to valid cognition or non-valid cognition, indeed there is nothing to prevent that from happening. In seeing how this arose from that, worldly people use inference, which deduces the meaning by relying on direct perception. Even though they do not designate things with those words, the meaning is not forsaken. Without both types of conventional, valid cognition, pure vision would be false, and for the impure level of seeing, something like a conch, one could not tell which is true and which is false, the white conch or the yellow one. Without both ways of investigating the absolute truth, one would not know the unity of the two truths, and the absolute would be reduced to a fabricated extreme. In this way, ultimate valid cognition would destroy itself. Upon investigation, relative truth, the object being comprehended, is not established, and neither are the mind and self-awareness, which do the comprehending. They are like the moon in water. Ultimately, the two truths are inseparable. They are a single truth, the final reality of nirvana, because the ultimate is in all phenomena. Consciousness and objects of knowledge are inseparable from the appearance of the kayas and wisdoms, which are beyond notions of a center or limit. After opening wide the excellent eye of wisdom that is profound and vast, as explained above, one needs to see the excellent path taken by the highly intelligent ones, the descendants of the Sugata. So do not let your actions be fruitless by playing around when you could train systematically in the vehicles of the sutras and tantras, so difficult to find. Therefore, those who exhibit intelligence possess the four reasonings as described above, and perform their investigations without depending on others. This is how they become certain about the four reliances. Without a mind like this, it is like the blind leading the blind. Relying on consensus, literal words, or what is easy to understand, goes against the understanding of the four reliances. Therefore, one should not rely on individuals. One should rely on the Dharma. One will be liberated by what is said about the path established through authentic reasoning, not by those who say it. If what an individual says is correct, then it is suitable, no matter what the person is like. Even the Sugatas have emanated in forms such as butchers in order to tame sentient beings. However, if what the person teaches contradicts the meaning of the Mahayana, there will be no benefit, no matter how good the person looks, like the form of a Buddha emanated by a demon. When intelligent ones hear and contemplate the Dharma, they should rely on the meaning, and not on the words. If the meaning is understood, there is no contradiction, no matter how it is expressed in words. Things are named because of wanting to express an understandable meaning. Once the meaning has been understood, if the speaker keeps trying to formulate it in words, it is like continuing to search for tracks after an elephant has been found. If one elaborates further because of attachment to words, concepts proliferate endlessly. Wandering further and further from the meaning, immature beings just make themselves tired. For any single phrase, like, "bring me the wood," if wood is differentiated according to its locale, etc., the possibilities are endless. Once one has understood the meaning of the phrase, then the words have fulfilled their purpose. When a man points to the moon with his finger, a childish person looks at the finger instead. Foolish ones who adhere to the words have difficulty understanding, even though they think they understand. When one engages in the meaning, one should know the provisional meaning and the definitive meaning, and rely on the definitive rather than the provisional. Since the omniscient one was all-knowing, he taught the yanas in a sequence, like steps ascending a staircase, according to students' styles, capacities, and interests. There are 8 categories of intentions and indirect intentions based on the Buddha's purpose regarding the basis for the intention. He spoke this way because it suited his purpose, whereas taking the words literally would impair valid cognition. Because of his intentions, there are various levels of teachings, from the 4 Buddhist tenets up to the sublime Vajrayana. The aspects that are not understood by the lower levels are clarified by the higher ones.
Having seen which teachings are closer to reasoning that accords with Scripture, one holds to the definitive meaning. Like swans who can extract milk from water, those of the highest intelligence play in the ocean of the Buddha's speech. The profound Vajrayana teachings are concealed through the 6 parameters and the 4 styles of interpretation. They are established through flawless reasoning, along with the key instructions of the lineage. All phenomena are a unity of primordial purity and great equality. The 2 types of accurate valid cognition establish exactly what this means. Without contradiction, one penetrates the essence of the prajñāparamita, the creation stage, the completion stage, and the great completion, by means of the 4 styles of interpretation through the literal, general, hidden, and ultimate meanings. Through that, highly intelligent ones become confident, through certainty, about the meaning. These heirs of the Buddha hold the inexhaustible treasure of the Dharma and the victory banner of the teachings of Scripture and realization. When practicing the definitive meaning, do not rely on consciousness, the perceiving mind and what it perceives, which depend on words and concepts. Rely instead on non-dual wisdom. That which has reference points is the mind with a nature of apprehending, the apprehended. Conceiving of things in this way is false. In reality, there is no actual contact. Whether something is conceived of as an entity or a non-entity, or as both or neither, no matter how it is focused on, there are still reference points. The sutras say that whatever is grasped through conceptualization is the domain of demons. Conceptualization cannot be destroyed by negating or affirming. But if one sees without removing or adding anything, there is liberation. Completely free from perceiver and perceived, naturally occurring, timeless awareness is natural luminosity. Since all fabrications of the 4 extremes are brought to an end, timeless awareness is said to be supreme. Just like someone blind from birth looking at the form of the sun, immature beings have not previously seen this. No matter how they imagine it, they don't actually know it, so immature beings feel anxious. However, by means of authentic scriptures, reasoning that refutes all extreme views, and the Guru's key instructions, just like a blind man gaining sight, one will see it for oneself. At this time, those with devotion taste the nectar of the Dharma of the Tathagata, and their eye of increasing joy turns toward the wisdom body of the Sugatas. At this time, all phenomena, without exception, are resolved in the state of equality. One gains the inexpressible confidence of certainty and skill in explaining the inexhaustible treasure of the Dharma. By gaining expertise in the way the 2 truths are, one sees the reality of the 2 truths in union. When this happens, it is like removing the husk to reveal the essence. One knows how to endeavor in all the skillful means. Since the Sugatas know about skillful means, all their methods are said to be a genuine path. This is why one gives rise to irreversible confidence in one's teachers and their teachings. By actualizing supreme, non-dwelling, timeless awareness, one is naturally liberated from the extremes of cyclic existence and peace. Continuous, effortless, great compassion boundlessly pervades all directions and times. The supreme, stainless cause is possession of the 4 reliances, which comes from contemplating how the Dharma of the 2 truths is established by the 4 types of reasoning. From this comes forth the fruition, profound, timeless awareness, and when this fully manifests, the 8 great treasures of confidence are released from concealment in the basic space of awareness. The treasure of memory is not forgetting the teachings previously studied and contemplated. The treasure of intelligence is discerning the vast and profound meanings of those teachings. The treasure of realization is internalizing the entire meaning of the sutras and tantras. The treasure of retention is never forgetting anything one has studied. The treasure of confidence is satisfying all beings by teaching well. The treasure of the Dharma is completely protecting the precious treasury of the sacred Dharma. The treasure of bodhicitta is maintaining the unbroken lineage of the 3 jewels. The treasure of accomplishment is attaining acceptance of the true nature, the equality of the unborn. Those who master the inexhaustible 8 great treasures and never part from them are praised by the Buddhas and their heirs, and become the protectors of the 3 worlds. The teachings of the Buddha are valid since they are proven through valid cognition. One develops certainty through a valid path of valid teachings, so one sees the truth, which is the fruition. Having completely purified his vision and perfected great compassion, the Sugata demonstrated the path and said, "Taste the deathless nectar I have found." Experience it through the 4 reasonings and the 4 reliances. even though he shared this nectar, it is difficult to experience its supreme taste. Because of our degenerate era and the way it goes against the Dharma, seeing this, my mind is filled with pure motivation and the greatest reverence for the teachings. Through the virtue of expressing just a little of the way to develop the stainless wisdom which comes from contemplating in this way, may all beings attain the state of Manjushri. When the lotus of my heart turned toward Manjushri, the son of speech, it blossomed with devotion, and this honey pollen of excellent explanations came forth. May this increase the feast of fortunate bees. In accord with my previous intention to write this, when the learned one, Laksam Gyaltsen, recently urged me to do so, I, Jampal Jepe, wrote it in a single day, the 29th day of the 3rd lunar month of the Sakyong year. Mangalam, may this be auspicious. There are 104 verses. May this be virtuous.